Hey there, it's time for episode 8 of the Road to Full Planche. So it's been a while since I talked about my bent arm training. The last time I did, I was still training with 5 kilograms on my waist. Well, now I've moved on to something more difficult, but instead of adding another 5 kilograms on my waist, I decided to switch it up a bit and add 7 kilograms to my feet, which is overall more difficult than 10 kilograms on the waist. So with the power of Dragon Ball Z's soundtrack guiding me, here is some recent footage of my bent arm training. Now let's talk about the real topic at hand. In episode 7, I got a comment from a user about wrist and forearm pain, and this comment came at the perfect time for me because right now I'm also having a bit of forearm pain myself. The problem with wrist pain is common when we train the planche on the ground. I personally very rarely get wrist pain, but of course in the beginning I also had it. Let's take a look at what might be causing wrist problems. So in the parallettes, the wrist is staying in a nice straight position. When we move to the ground, however, it is not in a straight position and we must first shift our palms sideways so we can compensate for our lack of flexibility. Many people keep their palms completely flat on the ground. I try to elevate my fingers but still keep my knuckles on the ground. This creates a much more solid base for me and I can apply straight arm strength better. The next thing common on the ground is that as we start to lean forward, this part of the palm starts to go in the air, which puts more pressure on the rest of the palms. The wrists should be prepared for the different position. When I had wrist pain myself, I did simulated planche leans with the chair. The chair's flat surface is basically like a simulation of the ground. Before you start the exercise, make sure to have your palms shifted sideways and elevate your fingers so you can replicate the same conditions of the ground. This exercise improves wrist flexibility and strength and prepares you for planche training on the ground. To this day, I still use it as a warm-up before every static hold training. Also notice how as my hands go down, the palm starts to elevate here, just like on the ground. So it's pretty much simulating the same conditions of planche training on the ground. But the reason I prefer it over the ground is because since the chair is no more than 3 kilograms, the pressure is constant and very light. So I can go really deep like in a Maltese lean and I would still get a relatively light pressure all throughout the wrist, forearm, elbow, biceps and shoulder, which cannot be said for the ground. I mean, even if you are doing a Maltese lean with your knees on the ground, it's still a very difficult thing, and the intensity is just not appropriate for warming up, for improving flexibility and for getting used to planche training on the ground. So with the chair you have a greater range of motion to play with and you don't get those sudden increases of pressure like you would on the ground. The second thing that keeps me wrist pain free is my handstand training on the ground. Thanks to my handstand, I've developed fairly strong wrists, but keep in mind how I do my handstands, so I don't do them every day like a maniac. If you've watched my previous episodes, you would know that I do handstand push-ups one day, rest for 2 days, and then repeat my handstand work. This way I give my wrists some work to do, then they rest for 2 days and become stronger. But I've been doing this for 3 months now, and before the summer I had been doing it for 7 months straight. So I've spent quite some time on my wrists with this philosophy of giving them 2 days of rest. And as the months passed, they got very strong. Even now, with me training with 7 kilograms on my feet, I feel no wrist pain. However, if I stop giving them 2 days of rest, I might feel some wrist pain. So whatever exercise you choose to do for wrist strength, make sure that the wrists are forced to absorb your entire body weight. A frog stand, for example, should be sufficient. Wall-supported handstands are also good, but some of your weight will be absorbed by the wall and not the wrist. A good way to go about it is to do 20 5-second holds of whichever position you choose. Then you would rest for 2 days and repeat the same thing. Let's talk about the forearms now. I've had forearm pain for the last week on my right arm. It's getting better now, but that's not the point. The point is you can prepare all you want, you can warm up as much as you like, you can put on protective sleeves, but if you go to a progression level that you cannot do or are just barely able to do, you can injure yourself. Let's take a look at what I did. I can hold an advanced tuck planche for 12 seconds. Okay, great, but I can hold it for 6 to 7 seconds without shaking, and during the last seconds I really start to shake uncontrollably. This shows that I still have to improve the advanced tuck before moving on to the one leg planche. If you've watched the previous episode, it becomes apparent that I forgot about that. Even though I held the position for 3 seconds, it was pointless to try because now I have forearm pain. From now on, if I can't hold to the previous level comfortably, I will not move to the next planche level. Because even if you do manage to squeeze out 2, 3, 4 seconds of perfect form, it's still pointless because you're pushing yourself to your limits and you risk injuring yourself. So now that I have forearm pain, I won't do any straight arm planche training until it's completely recovered. It's much better now. I am barely feeling any pain, but I still have to wait a while and just stick to doing bent arm pushing workouts. To speed up the recovery, there are a lot of things that you can do. If you search on the internet, you will find them. I'm not going to list them all here. The one thing I will say is this: you have to stop training the static holds until you recover completely, because the injury might get worse. If you are still progressing with your bent arm pushing strength in the meantime, the straight arm strength regress will be kept to a minimum, and if your injury stays only for a few weeks, there might not even be a regress. For example, I will now probably end up not doing any static hold training for about 2 or 3 weeks and still keep my advanced tuck planche progress thanks to all the handstand push-ups and dips that I will do.